I'm sorry I'm loading up this channel so quick, but I'm sure you know how it is when you've got a new project. You just want to jump right in. That's one of my cats, Pixie. She's my fourth of 5. All my cats came from sort of dire rescue situations. Although she's one of the best. She came from a shelter where we volunteer. So that right there is the very... Oh, don't you even, cat. No, 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 no. Do not try to play with this. This is the center of... Look at her flopping all over. What? The center of the project, which is Death by Cross Stitch. Now you want attention? Which is right there. And I am working on sort of the hindquarters of this beast. Oh, that's another one of my cats. These two I got together. This other one that's behind the camera, who's probably gonna jump up here in a second, is PNC. Anyway, let me get going on this, because you don't want to hear about my cats. I don't know, maybe you want to hear about my cats. So I am here, there. Alright. So, let me get this started. What happened with the cats, these two, is we volunteered at an animal shelter, and this one who's over here playing, she is 14. We got her last year when she was 13, so she's very geriatric. She technically, supposedly, doesn't have much longer to live, although you could have fooled me, because she acts like a kitten. And she was very freaked out by being at the shelter, which I completely understand. She'd basically just hide away in a small cubby hole. Can't really see what I'm doing, can you? And we didn't interact with anybody, and she was there forever, and she is the sweetest thing, and we knew that she was so sweet, because we saw her all the time, but she was there for weeks, and nobody was even thinking about adopting her. My son, again, is autistic, and by the way, all I'm doing is I'm starting this thread by burying it, so it takes a little while, because I actually have to do the real, normal, traditional cross stitch, which is in one side, flip it over, and do the other side, as opposed to how I normally... Look at her playing. How I normally do the cross stitch, which is to bend the fabric, and just do it from the top so it's quicker. Anyway, my son absolutely loves animals, and again, he's autistic. When he was turning 13 for his 13th birthday present, what he wanted to do was start volunteering at the animal shelter. That's what he wanted for his birthday present. They had a rule that you had to be 13 in order to start volunteering, and they also said that kids under 16 had to have an adult with them, so I started doing it with him too. And he especially loves cats, and he has a real soft spot for geriatrics, meaning cats that are older. He thinks they should be respected, and he thinks that they should be adopted real quick and treated like the elders that they are. He also has a thing specifically for black cats. Again, this is just wanting to rescue because they are discriminated against because of the superstition that black cat will cross your path and you'll have bad luck or something crazy like that. I mean, does that seem like she's bad luck? So what happened with Pixie was she actually came from a different shelter that was, they call them kill shelters. My shelter that we volunteer at is not a kill shelter. They used to be, and then they transformed into a shelter where the policy was that they would not kill a healthy animal. They would hold on to them however long it took until it was adopted. By the way, if you have a kill shelter in your area, the way to transform it into a non-kill shelter is by volunteering there, because if if they don't have a lot of volunteers, then the biggest expense at a shelter is paying payroll for the people that work there. And if it's a shelter that has a lot of volunteers, then they can just spend the money on animals and food and stuff like that and keep them alive until they get adopted. So my shelter has a lot of support and it's pretty big. And so they actually will take animals from other shelters that are in danger of being put to sleep just because they don't have space or it's a policy or whatever. The shelter where Pixie and Pansy were at had a policy that any geriatric cat would be put to sleep. She was 13 when she went into the shelter system. I don't know why. And I mean, look at her. She's fine. Can you see her? I'm sorry for looking. Look at her being all cute. Oh, she's gonna come over now. Anyway, this is the point of what I'm doing, not the cat. So she would have just been put to sleep for basically being old, which is kind of not cool. Okay, so where I am in this pattern is I've done this back bump. I've done this 4, and then it's 1, 2, 3 bumps that are two up, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that they basically staircase over, and I'm going to get that sort of in place right now. Anyway, so the good thing about our shelter, where they have these animals that come from all over the country, actually, and we once had some dogs that came from South Korea who were rescued from a meat factory. And a lot of animals from Puerto Rico when they had that last hurricane. So it is all over the country. Is they're basically pre-vetted to be nice animals, because these shelters where they put animals to sleep for whatever reason. So I'm stepping up. You can see the staircase. There's the 2, and that's 1, 2, 3. I've got to get to 5. Basically, the shelters go through and they look at animals that have the best personalities, and they say, "Oh, this is a shame. This animal can't be put to sleep because of our policy of we only have dogs for a week before we put them to sleep or whatever." Again, I got Pixie because the shelter she was at had an age limit on their animals, and if they were of a certain age, they wouldn't adopt them out for any reason whatsoever. So my son, again, really loves animals, really has a soft spot for geriatric cats and for black cats, and Pixie was adorable, and she was just hanging out in the shelter forever, and so we just took her. And my cats, because I live in a quiet suburban sort of almost a farm area, because I have literal farms around. They are indoor outdoor. This next ledge over is 5 over. So again, I'm just sort of like getting a shadow area of where I need to be, and then once I get these all in, I'll fill in as I go down again, and then I will also recount, make sure I'm at the right spot. I don't screw it up again, so that's 5. And it should go up, so this is where I'd recount. And my cats, actually, the reason why, like, these two that I was talking to, they're chatting at each other, are Pixie and Pansy. The reason why they have names that start with a P and end in an E, and all of them do with a different vowel in the middle, is because those are the sounds a cat can hear the best. My cats all go their names, and once they know their names, we'll take them on walks. Literally, as a matter of fact, I'm about to take, I have the door shut and she doesn't know. She knows there's somebody on the other side, doesn't know who it is. She's making noise. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to take them for a walk outside and make sure that it's dark. So there's less dogs and less people because it freaks out the cats. But they all know their names and they come when they're called. Pix doesn't really like to go on the walk, so I don't force them. I take the cats that want to go. And on one of her first walks, she came across a stag, a deer, was a 10-point buck, and she took after it. Not in my neighborhood. She went after this deer. I'm just checking and making sure I've got everything right here. I'm recounting. One of the biggest bits of advice I can give is to double check your stitches as you go so you don't get caught up in a huge mess. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up and then over 2. Anyway, she took after the deer, and I was like, oh, maybe I've lost that cat. And she was out for a night and came back, and she was full of burrs because she'd been out, who knows where, out in the woods, chasing this deer. But she came back. She knew her place. Came back home. She was good. So my animals do have, I have all cats and no dogs. And I do have a really big yard. They're usually outside in the yard, especially in summer, so they really like it to just hang out in the grass. I really can't blame them. It's nice out. But that's kind of her story. When I first got her, she took off after a deer to try to protect me. Yeah? What? You coming up? You gonna try and steal my thread? But her story was, I got her a year ago, February, and when she first came to the shelter, oh, come on, no, go away. When she first came to the shelter, it was winter, and she got pretty sick, which happens. Now I've got to keep track of where I'm at. Let's see, so this should be, can you see on here where I'm at? I am not used to this. To show you where I am. Okay, so how can I show you on the map? Oh, it's also backwards from where I'm looking, so that sort of doesn't help, does it? Okay, I move everything over here. I have been basically making this part, the back of the animal, whatever this is. So that's the other way to check, is to check the white spaces and to count them. So here's that 2 there, and then there's a jump of 5, a jump of 2, and then it goes 1 and 1. So this actually can go 1 down here. It's not really a miscount, it's more like I'm just between the black space and the white space. I'm getting a little confused while telling the story. So Pixie came to the shelter with a whole bunch of other animals, and they thought that she was coming from the same household as my other black cat. Oh, she's watching this video. She's really interested in that. Is that right? Yeah, see, this is hard to see, so no, this one needs to be filled in there too. Again, that is not a misstitch. I'm just making it bigger than I need to. So that would come over 2, 1, 1. Yeah, see? Okay, this is not really a misstitch, but I'm going to undo it anyway. Just to make it easier on me. Here comes Pansy. So Pixie and Pansy, hey, don't chatter at each other. That's Pansy making this noise. They came to the shelter at the same time from the same originating shelter, and they thought that they had lived together because they were the same age. They're both black cats. Pixie's real small, and Pansy's a lot bigger, almost twice her weight. And Pixie was sick, and Pansy was not. So Pansy was put out on the floor and adopted because they were not what they call a bonded pair, which is when animals basically live together, they love each other, they really deserve to live with each other. But they thought they knew each other at least. And so Pansy was put out, and I remembered her real good. She's extremely devoted to people, and she's the sweetest little thing. I feel like I'm screwing this up again. See, talking and stitching. Yeah, I did. That stitch should not be there. Well, at least I'm catching it real quick this time as opposed to last time. Talking and stitching is not really doing it for me. Anyway, I have to figure out where. See, this goes straight over because that has a 2. White spots as opposed to this one. This one is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Pansy was not sick, so she was up for adoption. They obviously are not going to adopt out a sick animal. And she went out for adoption and was adopted really quickly because she really likes people. She's really personable with people, a little bit territorial still now with other cats. And she was gone before Pixie even went onto the floor to be adopted because she had to get healthy first. And so Pixie was out and basically hiding from people because she just didn't really fit in a shelter situation, which I don't blame her. And okay, so this one, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 2 up there already. And every time we would come and volunteer and see her, she was just absolutely adorable and sweet. And she just wasn't being adopted because she wasn't acting like, a personable cat. People go in there and they're like, which one is going to be the cutest and the most sort of gregarious cat, which actually is not necessarily the best cat to get, because if you've got a cat that's super gregarious, it's going to want to be with you all the time. Oh, this is a knot, and this is a pain because it's black and I can't see which one to pull. There we go. I think I got it. There we go. To get that knot out. They'll want to have your attention all the time. So maybe that's going to work for you and maybe it won't. For me, like, okay, I've got these two sitting here with me. I don't really want them insisting on being the center of attention all the time. No, I'm pulling out this thread. If I have to, I'll cut it. Cut that knot out and restart. But I don't want to. There we go. Starting to pull it out. So people think they know what they want. Like, they want a kitten when they go to the shelter, and they don't realize how rambunctious a kitten is when it gets home and how much attention it needs. That's why I prefer older, although these two are definitely the oldest I've ever gotten. Okay, so can you see where I am? I'm doing this little tail up here. So this is the next stitch I'll do. I'm going to do these two because they aren't really connected to anything right off. And how I'm going to do it, because I don't want to double up, is I'm going to go, this is the stitch I'm on, I'm going to go down here and then under up, so that when this comes up I can do this square on its own. Do the first under stitch and then over, and then I'm right where I want to be to do this one right here. And then finish this row over. So basically with Pixie, we finally decided, and I already had 3 cats. I was like, really, 3 cats? I always say, but however many cats I have, that's enough cats. I don't need any more. Because Pixie was number 4, and you know, she was so sweet. She kept to herself. Really good cat, healthy, nothing wrong with her. Totally deserved to be out of the shelter. So finally, we're like, okay, we'll take Pixie, and brought her home. All good. And then in May, so they came to the shelter at the beginning of January. Pansy was adopted out pretty much immediately, and then about 6 weeks later, we took Pixie home, and then in May, we were volunteering, and we were told that Pansy came back to the shelter, that her owner had some sort of health emergency and was no longer capable of taking care of an animal, which is terrible and a shame. And again, you know, Pansy's bouncing all over the place. They were in the first shelter. Well, I don't even know, because they came from a different shelter, what their life situation was before they went to that shelter. They clearly were used to being in a home. So for some reason, they were no longer in their original home, and they went from one shelter to a second shelter, and then Pansy went to a new home and had to go back to the shelter. It's awful. So they gave me this whole line about, you know, we think these two, I got another cat trying to get in here. We think these two, because he hears me talking, he thinks I'm talking. Yeah, here comes Poppy. You gonna come up here, Pops? We think these two live together, and, you know, here's the deal. We think they should go back together. It's kind of fate that it didn't work out, that the unfortunate problem happened with the other owner's health. And so you should take Pansy because, you know, they lived together for 13 years and yeah, they should live the rest of their life together. Now, that's a pretty good argument to me. So I took Pansy. Now, Pansy actually has some health issues. She has a heart murmur. It's possible that she could go pretty quick from a heart attack. But it hasn't affected her yet. And again, she goes on these walks and everything else. Turns out they were not from the same household. And they didn't like each other so much at all. Female cats kind of like to be very actually all cats like to be territorial, but they're very much thinking they should be the queen of everything and top dog, and they did not get along. And I was like, oh no, is this a problem? Actually, Pansy still doesn't get along with most of these cats until they basically calm down and say, well, you know, I guess that's how she is. And when she makes her mind known by chattering, see, there she goes. She's not really fighting. She's more like saying, hey, I'm here and I'm going to be from the line. She doesn't actually fight with the other animals, but she makes it sound like she's gonna. She's pretty bold. Only one of the other cats is still sort of frightened of her. The other ones are sort of like, okay, whatever, there you are doing your thing again. I'm just gonna ignore you. It was a little rough when she got here. I was really surprised, but I'm not going to, you know, this is a geriatric cat. She also is now 14, has a heart problem. Sweetest thing to people, absolutely loving life. And, I just pulled it. I'm not going to take her back to the shelter because it was sort of like, you know, they only knew what they could know. They thought that they came from the same house because they were not the original intake people. They got them both from a different shelter. So that was Pixie and Pansy's story. They are the most recent ones. Actually, I was really tempted to get another cat because this past weekend we had Clear the Shelter, which is a national push to clear the shelters to get all animals possibly adopted out. And another one, so sweet, so sweet. But one of my cats, because they're all rescue situations. Pixie and Pansy actually, even though they're bouncing from shelter to shelter, probably had the best situations to start with. My other three cats had some not good situations. And one of them came from a cat hoarder who had dozens of cats. And I really don't want to traumatize him by having too many cats. I mean, as long as they can have their own space and they're well taken care of and they're well fed and they're getting, you know, whatever medical needs they need taken care of and they're getting attention from people. You know, I know somebody has 10 cats and they are all treated like they're single cats and they're all fine. I don't, you know, if you're up for that and you can take care of the animals, I don't think that there should be any arbitrary limit on how many you can have. I mean, if you're living in squalor and, I mean, there's some really gross situations. Although, seriously, I think this woman had 34 cats or something like that. I mean, that's a little much. But I still don't want him to be upset by having so many animals. And there's always a strange dynamic when you bring a new animal in. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5 past that white. And again, once I get over there, I can check it by comparing it. 1, 2, 3, 2. Yeah, this is called counted cross stitch for a reason here. So over here, can you see my hand's in the way? So I am doing this stitch. I'm going to compare it to this one. This one is over but one, and 1, 2, 3 down. Let's see. So over 1 and 1, 2, 3 down. Yep, so I'm right on track here. Doing this kind of line actually kind of annoys me. It's in the middle because it will be a little visible. So what I'm going to do, actually I'm not going to do that. I was going to go over and go back down, but then I would have to go back up again. Same thing. I think I'm just going to leave it and take a good care of it. When it's time to fill in this line, because there's more black right here, I'm not going to do the same thing where I'm going side to side like this. I will go straight up it, and that should help hide it, that it's not having, so you can see on the back what I'm talking about. These are all going in one direction, and then this is going in a different direction, and where they meet, it's really obvious because the tension is going to be different, and there's no way to avoid that, except, like I said, to hide it. So I won't do it twice. I will make sure that when I go up here, I don't stop and go in a different direction. It will be really obvious. I'm just trying to think it through. I mean, it is all black. Generally, when doing this particular pattern on this tight weave, which is 18, they actually suggest you only do one strand instead of two, but I like how it looks with two, so I'm doing it with two, which is a little overkill. I've gone over. I don't know how that's going to go when I put this video up. These are getting real long because I'm getting chatty. I should just do this and not talk. Oh yeah, I did just stab myself a little, which doesn't actually hurt. Should, but it won't. These needles, these are embroidery needles. They do have a point tip on them. That's just the kind that I like. Most cross stitch needles don't have a pointed tip, they have a blunt tip, but I just like how these needles work better. Chance of stabbing myself. Alright, so I could keep going, but I'm going to stop right here. Bury my thread. Go diagonal so that it isn't really obvious. What you just do is gently put the needle under your other threads like that. Without actually pulling it, because that will mess up the tightness of it. Pull it out and then I clip it right there. And so that's I've done 3 lengths of the thread at this point. And that's where I am. It's upside down. So it doesn't look like a lot of progress. It's not going to look like a lot of progress for a long time, I think. Anyway, that's where I'll end this one now.